So with the release of The Last of Us Part 2, we now have officially 3 games in the Last of Us franchise developed by Naughty Dog, and what I want to do in this video is carry on the conversation that I started in my Last of Us Part 2 review, where I just want to talk about this franchise and continue talking about these games because I just love this series. I think it's so fantastic, and again, after playing The Last of Us Part 2, I've now technically played through it a second time. For my second playthrough, I actually was with my friend who played it, and I sat beside her and played it with her, and I played a couple bits here and there where it got a bit scary, but I really want to sit down and just actually talk about these games a little bit more, and specifically what I want to do in this video is rank all 3 of The Last of Us games, which means The Last of Us Part 1, The Last of Us Left Behind, and also The Last of Us Part 2, from my least favourite to my favourite. I don't want to say from worst to best, because none of these are the worst. Like, these are all incredible games in their own right, all 3 of them, but I want to rank them because I thought that'd be fun to do. So let's just sit back and dive straight into it. Of course, this list is just my own personal opinion. Obviously, we do know that this franchise can be a little divisive when it comes to certain games, but this is just my own personal opinion, so make sure you remember that as you're watching this video. Make sure you leave your own ranking of The Last of Us games in the comment section down below. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts. So with all that said and all that squared away, let's jump into my ranking. So coming in at number 3, I'm going with The Last of Us Left Behind. Now, The Last of Us Left Behind was, of course, the standalone DLC expansion for The Last of Us on the PlayStation 3, and it was also included within The Last of Us Remastered on the PlayStation 4. This is a really solid little expansion. It's not very long, it's only a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours or so, so it doesn't give you a lot more to do in the world of The Last of Us, but what it does do is it really fills in some gaps and really helps you understand Ellie as a character, where she came from, and how she became the character she was when we meet her in The Last of Us. This game is a prequel and takes place literally just before the events of the first game, and also in sections runs simultaneously with the winter section of The Last of Us Part 1, where Joel gets injured. We actually see how Ellie was able to basically save Joel and get him out of that situation that he was in, which is really cool to fill in those gaps. Like I say, this expansion isn't particularly long, it's only a few hours long, you can get done with it within an evening, but it doesn't take away from the fact that this is still an incredible expansion with so many great character moments. We really get to see Ellie become extremely competent and extremely badass in her own right. When we first see her in winter, when you're playing through The Last of Us Part 1, Ellie has basically become an efficient survivor within the apocalypse. We actually get to see how she does that in this DLC. We also get the flashback sections of this DLC as well, where we get to meet Riley, who was Ellie's best friend and also her love interest within the game as well, and this was a really just lovely and human story between these two characters and their friendship, you know, them trying to stay friends and them trying to live out their lives in this post-apocalyptic world. It was just a lovely expansion. Like, there's so many lovely moments, even though it is a bit horrific at times because of course it's The Last of Us. It still had so much going for it and was still so beautiful and so tender, and I just absolutely love this expansion. I played through this a second time recently as well, and it truly filled my heart with joy. It's just such a great expansion, but it is my least favourite of the 3, so this is where it goes. Coming in second place is The Last of Us Part 1. Now, The Last of Us, obviously, I've spoken about it a little bit before in my review for The Last of Us Part 2, but this game is just incredible. It's easily one of my favourites of all time. It's in my top 5 for sure. I just adore The Last of Us. What this game did, you know, I was already excited for The Last of Us just because it was developed by Naughty Dog, and obviously Uncharted is a franchise that is incredibly near and dear to my heart. So the fact that Naughty Dog, this was their new IP, I was incredibly excited about that. But nothing could have truly prepared me, or I don't think anybody else, for what this game was going to deliver, because it just came out of the gates and it just took everyone by surprise. Immediately within those first like 15 minutes of the game, everyone knows what I'm talking about, where it just hits you with this emotional gut punch that no game has really ever done for me before, where you were just like, whoa. And with that, it got your attention, you were invested in this world, you were invested in this character of Joel, and you wanted to see how this story was going to continue, as there was a time jump, which was such a great way to do it. And just being in this world, exploring it, learning how it worked. You start on one end of the country, and you eventually have to go to the other side of the country to deliver this young girl to this group on the other side of the country. And that particular story was very simple but super effective, because what it allowed for were these incredible and little moments between Joel and Ellie, and the way that these characters started off kind of resenting each other. Joel didn't want her, Ellie didn't want to go with him, but they were forced onto this journey together, and they ended up actually finding a kindred spirit within one another, and Ellie kind of found a father figure, Joel kind of found a daughter figure, and they became this little family. And it was just this incredibly beautiful journey that I don't think anybody really expected to get that invested in these characters, because, you know, when you look at the Uncharted series, I love all those characters, I think they're great, but you don't have the same emotional resonance with those characters as you do with Joel and Ellie in The Last of Us. And I think that's just because in Uncharted, as great as those games are and as incredible as they are, I'm not taking anything away from them, I adore those games, you don't really feel like there's as much danger in those games, that you don't really feel like something might happen to those characters, particularly Nathan Drake. You don't really feel like anything's going to happen to him, just because he's like basically a superhero within those games. Yeah, I only really felt like there was a sense of danger in the Uncharted series when we got to the final game, whereas in The Last of Us, because of those first 15 minutes, you knew that pretty much nothing was off the cards. So it allowed you to get super invested in these characters, and I love that. And I think that this game, in terms of its gameplay, I know the gameplay in The Last of Us is a bit divisive. You either really like it or you don't. I think that The Last of Us gameplay is really solid. I really like the mechanically how it works. I like the backpack system particularly, and how, you know, you kind of have your weapons on your sort of immediate hotkeys, but then you have your other weapons in your backpack. I like how that all works. The crafting system was really great because it was simple. And the gunplay was really effective because it wasn't quite just, you know, again, I'm comparing it to Uncharted, but, you know, in Uncharted, where it's very easy to shoot your guns, in The Last of Us, it's a little bit more difficult to do that. It's a little bit more realistic. It's a bit more grounded to really, again, immerse you within this world, and I really didn't expect that. And also, with this game being very horror-centric, of course, being about a zombie apocalypse and a zombie pandemic, we do get to see these incredible creature designs for the infected and for the clickers and the bloaters, these incredibly scary designs that are actually based on a thing in real life, which makes it even more scary. It doesn't affect humans, but that's what this game kind of tells the story of, is what if this thing that infects basically ants and insects, what if that was able to be transferred to humans? What would happen? And that's The Last of Us, and I think that's insane. But an incredible game nonetheless. Fantastic characters, beautiful writing, incredible gameplay, and truly a defining game for Sony, for PlayStation, for Naughty Dog, and for gaming in general. However, my number one spot has to go to The Last of Us Part 2. I mean, I said that nothing could have prepared me for The Last of Us. Nothing could have prepared me for The Last of Us Part 2 either. This game just blew my socks off. I mean, the first time that I played through the game was an interesting one, because I really liked the game, but I obviously did have, if you've seen my review for it, I did have a couple of issues with the game, which for a couple of them completely ebbed away by the time I got to the end of the game, but there were a couple of things as well that kind of took tiny little pointers away from it. I still thought it was an incredible game, but there was a couple of things that took away from it. But after my second playthrough, I was just like further cemented into this world and thought, wow, what a game this is. Being a part of this journey with Ellie and going on this revenge quest with her was something that was just instantly, again, like The Last of Us Part 1, which grabs you instantly. The Last of Us Part 2 does the same thing, as within the first couple of hours you have your motivation as to why you're going after the WLF. You are on Ellie's side, you want to go there, and then the game completely does a 180 on you, and you play as Abby. You play as the villain, who, Abby, I thought was a truly wonderful character. So beautifully created, so beautifully fleshed out, so beautifully performed by Laura Bailey. It was just an incredible character, and the way that the game completely flips that on you makes you think about perspective, makes you think about how different people interpret different things depending on the context, depending on where you are in the world. And you actually begin to sympathize with Abby. You actually start to realize why she did what she did. It has consequences that link back to the first game, which I thought was just an incredible way to do it. The writing in this game is unparalleled. It's unlike anything I've ever seen in a video game before, and I think Neil Druckmann needs to be completely commended for this game, because even though not everyone loves it and not everyone agrees with it, and, you know, it's always going to be like that, you can't take away from the fact that this game is incredibly well written and it's just beautifully crafted through and through. And the characters in this game just get even better. Like I say, not only with Ellie and Abby, but Joel, even though his character is short-lived in this game, you do feel his presence throughout, and it's just incredibly heartwarming. And anytime you have a flashback with Joel, it just completely destroys you. And then every other character, like Tommy, who gets a lot more to do in this game, Jesse, Dina, these characters who you get incredibly invested in incredibly quickly, who you care about. And again, just like The Last of Us Part 1, there are true stakes in this game. I felt like at any moment anyone could die, because not only does Joel go straight away, but Jesse dies pretty early on as well. And I just thought, oh my god. And it's the emotions of this game that really get to me. No game has ever made me feel such a range of emotions before. While playing this, I felt anger, I felt sadness, I felt happiness. Just a true range of emotions that video games often struggle to bring out of a player. But The Last of Us Part 2 did it with ease. And I couldn't believe what I was witnessing while playing this game, and even witnessing within myself. This game is a true masterpiece. I genuinely believe that. I don't want to use the word masterpiece too much, but genuinely, I do believe this is a masterpiece. I think this is Naughty Dog's best game. I think this is one of the best games ever made. I think it probably is the best game ever made, in my opinion. At least it's the best game that I've ever played. It's just on another level, and I adore this game through and through. Like I say, as I said at the beginning, this could be my favourite game of all time. I'm currently actually in the middle of replaying a few different of my favourite games of all time at the moment, because I want to truly decide what is my favourite. But The Last of Us Part 2, I'm pretty confident in saying is my favourite game of all time. It's just incredibly well done, and I've never felt such a connection and such a true investment in a world and characters. And I don't know if we're ever going to get a Last of Us Part 3, but if we don't, this is the perfect ending to this series. I couldn't believe, you know, how incredible this game was, and I don't know if they'll ever top it. But then again, I said the same about The Last of Us Part 1, and they did it, so I don't know. I don't know if we're going to get Last of Us Part 3. If we do, fantastic. If we don't, fantastic. Like, this was just a beautiful, beautiful game, and truly, as I said, this is the greatest game that I've ever played, and quite possibly my favourite game of all time. So there you have it, guys. There's my personal ranking of all 3 games in the Last of Us series, from my least favourite to my favourite. What did you think of my list? And make sure you leave your own list in the comment section down below. How would you rank the Last of Us games? Let's have a cool discussion in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. And as always, guys, if you want to see more gaming content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads from me. And also, if you have any more suggestions for gaming videos like this, make sure you leave them in the comment section down below as well. I'd love to get your input on these sorts of things. And as always, guys, I hope to see you again in my next video, whenever that may be.